Hello and welcome. How divided is Sri Lanka's society after more than a quarter century of brutal fighting? Lingering tensions remain between the minority Tamil and majority Sinhalese at a time when unity and integration are essential to save the massive refugee population created by the conflict. From its start in 1983, it became one of the world's most enduring ethnic conflicts. But it abruptly came to an end in May with the killing of the leader of the Tamil Tigers, Velupillai Prabhakaran. In the final stages of the war, hundreds of thousands of Tamils ended up locked in military camps, almost entirely off limits to journalists, human rights investigators and political leaders. They've remained in those camps ever since, with no clear determination of their future. The Sri Lankan government says that there are some Tamil Tiger fighters hidden among the refugees, and therefore they all pose a security risk. This only feeds the suspicion of the Tamil minority that they're doomed to be second-class citizens forever. On today's show we ask, can Sri Lanka finally close the chapter on its civil war and bring unity to the country? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE and enter the chat room to take part. We'll also get your phone calls onto the show as well. Joining me today from Toronto is Mahinda Gunasekara, the president of the Sri Lanka United National Association of Canada, an advocacy group based there. And as I say, he joins us from Toronto, while in the studio here with me is Bruce Fine, the legal counsel for Tamils for Justice, which has argued for independence for the Tamil minority in Sri Lanka. Mr. Fine's also served as a top official in the US Justice Department during the Reagan administration. But before we get to them, let's go to New York to get an update on the humanitarian situation in the military camps in Sri Lanka and the conditions under which the relief groups are working. For that, I'm joined by James Ross, the Legal and Policy Director for Human Rights Watch. James, thanks for being with us. Just give us a quick update on where things stand in those camps right now.
Sure. You have more than 280,000, really men, women, and children who have gone through the terrible fighting that was occurring in the final months of the armed conflict. And they've now been put in displaced person camps in northern Sri Lanka. And as you've noted, I mean, they're locked in these camps without, being able to leave at all. So certainly there have been serious concerns about overcrowding, about sanitation issues and disease, some food issues, and the like. And, the government is trying to address those issues as well as the humanitarian agencies that are there.
James,
but as you've noticed, I mean, the people are locked up in these camps. These
James,
are
James,
detention centers.
Let me put that to you actually from a Facebook comment from a viewer, from Noreen Amin, who put it this way in her comment to us. How can the Tamil population reconcile with the majority Sinhalese when 10% or more of their comrades are detained in military camps, or as some say, prisons, or even worse, concentration camps? Sri Lanka can regain normalcy by reviving the long-lost social fabric by opening democratic forums. Solutions to social and cultural issues should be provided by civil means, not oppression. Taking the first part of that, prisons and concentration camps, that sounds a bit extreme. Is it? I mean, is the lockdown such?
Well, I don't want to get into an issue of terminology. I mean, the government calls them welfare centers. The point is that these are citizens of Sri Lanka. And many of them have relatives in the area. There are host families who are willing to take them. And undoubtedly, there are many who would stay in these camps until they can return home. So there's just no reason why these individuals who want to leave the camp, or even just to leave the camp during the day, should be able to do so. This is a basic liberty right, a basic freedom of movement right of individuals who are Sri Lankan citizens.
And how has the relief agency situation changed? For a long time, it was very difficult for agencies like yours to get access, or the Red Cross, for example.
Yeah, well, humanitarian groups and human rights groups such as Human Rights Watch, journalists do not have access to these camps. Humanitarian agencies do have access so they can perform their work, but there are real limits on their access as well. The government makes it difficult. They can't talk to individuals. They can't find out what happened to individuals, where they may have families and the like. So there are a lot of serious constraints that you don't find anywhere else in the world on these camps that are a real problem.
Do you see, a quick final thought, do you see any credibility issues with the Sri Lankan government's claims that there are fighters mixed amongst them and therefore there's a security threat?
Well, look, the government has every right to ensure that the Tamil Tiger fighters, are taken into separate custody and prosecuted. But they've been doing that. They've been screening individuals. You have children and women in these camps. They've had plenty of time to check out, who they are. That is no justification for detaining an entire population, which is what they're doing. Okay. And so that's the real concern.
Well, James Ross. I want to thank you there for joining us. Human Rights Watch Legal and Policy Director James Ross joining us from New York there. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Let me get our guests in here. Bruce Fine, get to you first, sir, here and ask, how, basically, is the conflict really over? Is it the end of the Tamil Tigers? Is this the final chapter in that conflict?
Well, I think one can say the military conflict is over. I'm not sure it says anything at all about the problems that are politically divisive and remain there, and they've been there not just the last 25 or 26 years of the open warfare. They've been here since the independence of Sri Lanka in 1948, in which 1 million Tamils were disenfranchised and lost their citizenship immediately, and punctuated in the decades thereafter with various riots and pogroms, if you will, against the Tamil Hindus, Tamil Christian population. And I think that there have been no recurrences of acts of violence, suicide bombers, since Mr. Prabhakaran is dead, and I think that aspect is over.
Right. So, you were quoted earlier in Chennai in India earlier this year saying to ask the Tamils to live along with the Sinhalese without a unified Sri Lanka would be as disastrous as asking blacks in the USA to go back to being slaves to the whites. Yeah. Is the divide that serious that it can't be resolved easily?
Well, I think it is. If you look at the history of law enforcement against those who have committed atrocity against Tamils, in over 61 years there's been one case. It was an aberrant case because an individual in the army was in bad straits with the government. One law enforcement case. There are no prosecutions ever. In the last months of the war, so to speak, 20, 30, 40,000 deaths. No prosecutions, no investigations. Every outside group that comes in concludes there's no cooperation whatsoever. And if you have a situation, and it was true in many respects in blacks in the South, where you could have lynchings, people disappear, their kids are kidnapped with impunity, you're not going to have any kind of unity. You've got to have, at least for an interim period, some period of confidence building where autonomy is able to enable the Tamils to govern themselves.
Well, let me bring in Mahinda Gunasekara here from Toronto. Thank you for being with us as well. So let me ask you what you see as the next steps. Do you see any resolution to the situation politically now and some kind of social integration realistically taking place?
I don't see any problem. Now that the Tigers are out of the way, the Tamils, not only the Tamils, the Muslims and everybody could get together. They have been cooperating with the government previously. Majority of the Tamil people have been living with the Sinhalese in the south. Actually 54%. Actually, in fact, today the majority of the people in Colombo, in the capital city, are also Tamils.
Then what do we do, sir?
There are Tamil...
So what do we do about the situation with the refugees then in the camps? You have, quotes of up to close to 300,000 people trapped there.
That's right. First and foremost, we have to look after them, we have to care, we have to look after their needs, and their homes have to be rebuilt. The villages where they lived had to be demined. That is a major issue. Already even the mine clearing has cost about 15 lives already among the mine clearing personnel. So it's not an easy job. The roads had to be built, the schools, the medical centers, the homes had to be restored, and there are plans to try and resettle at least 60% of the people before the end of the year.
Okay, so let me
looking after.
So I'll get back to you in just a second, Bruce Fine. Let me get back to you on this issue of what might be done. You're fairly aggressive in wanting some kind of action taken. I gather you have a fairly hefty indictment on 2 of the cabinet ministers in Sri Lanka.
Yes, there have been literally scores of war crimes that were committed, and this is any observers there watching the bombings, artillery shells of churches, schools, hospitals, displaced persons camp. The defense minister himself said, if you're not inside their so-called security zone, you are then don't deserve to exist. He said if you're not fighting the Tamil Tigers, you are a terrorist and you're going to be killed. And that's what explains these massive killings. And I had prepared a genocide indictment because it's clear, as was indicated by Mr. Ross, that the discrimination is based upon their ethnicity. They don't make a case-by-case determination of whether you're a Tamil Tiger or not. If you're Tamil, you're just automatically in one of these concentration camps because of your ethnicity.
So let me put to you a comment that came through Facebook from a viewer, and Mujib ur Rahman wrote in saying, I think Western countries and Tamil Tamil diaspora should play a big role to bring these people's lives to prosper rather than criticize the Sri Lankan government or block them from getting aid from international humanitarian organizations. What do you think the international community should be doing? What role does it have to play at the moment?
Well, it's very difficult, absent military force, to deal with a government that's so intransigent. The president said we're not going to have any political autonomy, any self-determination. Things are perfect, even though there's been mass slaughter and intimidation and war crimes. And the fact is, Sri Lankan government has China to bail them out from sanctions. And they're also very close to Iran. So they act rather with impunity. And so it's very limited what the West can do other than exhortation. And I say freeze the assets of the leaders, as they've done with other countries like Belarus or Burma. And perhaps with regard to some of those, they could indict them, because the crimes of genocide and war crimes that are committed by citizens are universal crimes and can be indicted anywhere. You could still have a difficulty of trial, but at least it would be sending a signal. I wanted to make just a couple of other observations. Those Tamils in Colombo, the reason most of them are there because they got bombed in the north where they are living. These are places of refuge. And you have 1 million Tamils who fled the country out of fear and intimidation. You've got 100,000 or more in Tamil Nadu in India that are there. They aren't fleeing back all I can say is there's not a problem in Sri Lanka of Tamils fleeing, trying to immigrate into the country.
Well, let's get a question here for you, Mr. Gunasekara, that came in from email from Kalesha Benedict Njelasani in Zambia. And our viewer wrote in saying, all things are possible if people sit down and look at the root cause of the problem. Now, it seems though the government isn't willing to grant any kind of amnesty to fighters or former fighters, is it?
Tamil fighters, the young people who have been engaged in military activities, they are being rehabilitated. Even the civilians, they are not entirely innocent. They have all undergone military training, and the LTT used them right along for laying mines, and the only cottage industry they had was making these IEDs and mines to be laid all around in the Wani region. Well, so as regards the
well, sir, I'm going to pause you there. I'm going to just pause you. I will get back to you in a moment. So we've got to take a short break here. As we pause, let me remind you, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments by logging on to livestation.com. You can enter the chat room where the debate's taking place, as you'll see right now. We'll be right back.
Dum